Hello everyone, my name is Victoria. Welcome to my book empire, and today's video is going to be about the books I read in April and May. I'm filming this on June 7th and it will come out only on June 14th, which is, I realize, pretty late, but better late than never, right? I'm still very excited about some of those books and want to share them with you, so let's get started with no further ado. The first book I read was the Persuasion by Jane Austen. I will read you the synopsis first and then tell you all my feelings about it. 8 years ago, Anne Elliot followed the advice of Lady Russell, her only true friend, and broke off her engagement to the dashing young naval officer Frederick Wentworth. When Anne and the now wealthy Captain Wentworth cross paths years later, it is clear that he has neither forgotten nor forgiven their past. Can true love survive heartbreak? Who should we listen to in matters of the heart? Filled with Jane Austen's trademark wit, Persuasion is both a delightful romantic comedy and a surprisingly subversive exploration of our need to persuade and to be persuaded by others. One of the things I appreciate most about Jane Austen is that her books always deliver exactly what you expect from them. Thoughtful stories, strong emotions, quiet but powerful moments, well-written, deep characters, and Persuasion has all of that. Her writing is beautiful. Sometimes I have to read the sentence twice because it's really hard to understand for me. Sometimes only because it's so beautifully written, and her books really make you slow down and pay attention. Nowadays, that is very precious in my opinion, because we are used to quickly developing plots, but with Jane Austen books, it's not the same. And you always read them very slowly and kind of carefully to get that atmosphere and the time she's describing and all the feelings the characters have, and I just love that about her books. Also feels like her novels are a foundation to so many modern tropes. Like this one, for example, is about slow burn, second chance, miscommunication, class barriers, hidden feelings, and the story is simple and quiet, but it does not lack emotions, because they once were in love and he asked her to marry him and she refused, but now when they meet again, she kind of feels that the feelings did not fade. He seems to be cold and distant, but is he really? You will only find out when you read this book. And it really may seem slow, but if you take your time with it, you will not regret, but because the story is very meaningful and emotional and it's worth your attention, like any other Jane Austen book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The second book I started reading within my Try a Chapter challenge, where I started reading 5 different books, like 30-50 pages of each, and was supposed to choose only one to continue. And there, This Summer Will Be Different by Carley Fortune won. And guys, it exceeded all my expectations. I gave it 5 stars. It's one of the best romances for me, and I think it's just resonated with me a lot at a particular moment. It begins with Lucy coming to Prince Edward Island to spend a vacation with her best friend Bridget there, but Bridget does not appear because she was late for her flight. So Lucy is alone at the bar where she meets this sexy guy Felix, and the moment their gazes meet, there is an instant chemistry. If you ever experience something like that, you'll really love this beginning. This made prologue so enjoyable for me. But there is a twist. When Felix and Lucy spend the night together, they realize that Felix is Bridget's brother, and Bridget specifically asked Lucy not to fall in love with her brother. Of course, they decide not to tell Bridget anything, and then next chapter we jump 5 years ahead, where Bridget is getting married to Miles, and Lucy is waiting at her flower shop for Bridget to go dress shopping, but Bridget does not show up, which is really strange because she's never late, so Lucy is kind of worried. And then Bridget calls her from Prince Edward Island, but like she's not in Toronto where she's supposed to be. Something strange is going on and Lucy's feeling that. And then Bridget asks for her help, asks her to come to PEI, is it called like that? Like Prince Edward Island. Lucy has a million reasons not to go, but this is her best friend and something is going on, so she decides to go. The characters are so well developed, and while the story is romantic, it's also about a very deep and meaningful friendship. This book just feels as if I was thrown back in time to the summer I spent in the USA when I was 20 years old. I felt nostalgia for some reason. I was feeling that vibe, that breeze, like summer, salty breeze on my face, and maybe that's the reason I rated this book so high, or maybe I just love this kind of stories. I don't know, but I absolutely loved this one. Also, before reading this one, I never really understood the best brother's friend trope. I always thought if I fell in love with my best friend's brother, or my best friend fell in love with my brother, if I had one, I would only be happy for them, for us, but I never really considered the heartbreak part. And this book showed me what all the fuss was about, and I think I now understand. It's very rare for me to be so enthusiastic about a simple romance novel, but here I just connected to the characters, to the situations, to every moment and emotion so deeply that I cannot rate it less than 5 stars. I just loved this book. I also feel like I really have to read Anne of Green Gables after this book, because it was mentioned so many times here that I felt like I was missing something, and I just feel I want to read it. Also, if you usually miss the acknowledgements, the one here was really good. So this one is definitely a recommendation from me, and I will read Carley Fortune's books for sure. I cannot tell you too much about the last book because it's the 7th book in the series, and it's Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows by J.K. Rowling. If I tell you my review, it will contain spoilers, obviously. But the only thing I can say is that intriguing new details are revealed about Dumbledore, and Harry realizes he doesn't really know Dumbledore, knows nothing about his past. And it's very interesting how J.K. Rowling made Dumbledore such a mysterious character and then unfolds so much about him in the last book only after what happened to him in the 6th book, if you know what I mean, because maybe not every single person in the world read Harry Potter. Anyway, I will link my full review somewhere here for you to watch it if you're interested. I gave this series 5 stars overall. I gave 4 stars to some books, but in general it's a 5-star for me. I think it's a masterpiece, and if you haven't read it still, I recommend you do that. The 4th book was an audiobook, so I don't have a physical copy, and it's called Penance by Kanae Minato. That's a Japanese author. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly. So Penance starts with an awful event that happens in a small Japanese town. The small girl is killed near her school, and she was with 4 of other girls, her friends. They didn't see the moment where she was killed, but they see her after that. None of them could identify the killer, so the case goes unsolved. And at the funeral of that girl, her mother, who is of course destroyed, tells the survived girls that if they don't find a killer or someone who is responsible for what happened to her daughter, she will never forgive them. And that basically, that moment haunts the girls for the rest of their lives. Then the book jumps years ahead, and each chapter is told by one of the girls, so we see different perspectives. You see how that one event and the guilt and pressure from mother's words completely shapes who they become and how their life goes. Each of them deals with it absolutely differently, and some of those stories are really dark and disturbing. It's not a typical thriller, it's more a psychological one and character-driven one. It makes us think about trauma, guilt, and how one sentence can really change a person's life. So I would say it's creepy, intense, and quite devastating, and I was covered with goosebumps throughout all the book, and I cannot really explain why. Maybe because it was a bit scary, or maybe because it was very easy to imagine all the things happening in real life, but I never felt anything like that while I was reading the book. Like, the first chapter was disgusting for me. I honestly had a lump in my throat the whole time, and it's one of those books after which you want to go take a shower to wash it off and take it out of your system. Definitely please check the trigger warnings before picking it up. I gave it 4 stars, which is a pretty high rating, but even when I think of it, I want to go take a shower because I feel uncomfortable. The next book is the longest. It has almost 700 pages in my edition, and it's The Meal on the Floss by George Eliot. I can hardly evaluate this book because I do understand what piece of craft it is and what a great job George Eliot has done to write this book, how emotionally rich it is and philosophically thoughtful. But I still didn't like it as much as I wanted to, and I guess the main problem here is because I just don't like coming-of-age stories. I think Of Human Bondage by Somerset Maugham is the only one of those that I really loved. Even though I disliked it, I still recommend you try and read it yourself, because I do realize that many people might really love this story. What really stood out for me in this book is how it explores gender and class inequality of its time. There is a great manifestation of sexism by the way women are discussed and treated, and in the dismissiveness toward them. And it's hard to miss the idea once said by one of the male characters that a foolish woman is the best thing that can happen to a man. And there is also a noticeable contrast in how Tom's and Maggie's misbehaviors, those are 2 main characters, how their misbehaviors are treated by their parents. Boys are excused for far more than girls. And yet George Eliot is clearly a feminist. That's actually her pen name. Her real name is Mary Ann Evans. Even though she lets her male characters voice sexist views and beliefs, she gives us Maggie, who is bright, complex, intelligent, emotionally deep, and who is having more moral struggles as well. And Tom, on the other hand, who comes across not as clever in the beginning, which shows that men are not always naturally, inherently smarter than women. They sometimes have to really work on that. And then there is also this other character, Mr. Stelling, Tom's teacher, who is shown not as noble and wise, but more self-serving and shallow. And I want to read you one of his quotes to understand the level of sexism and a dismissive view toward women's intellectual capacity. "They can pick up a little of everything, I dare say," said Mr. Stelling. "They have a great deal of superficial cleverness, but they could not go far into anything." I think this quote says it all. One of the themes that resonated a lot with me as a mother is how much children seek love, approval, and validations of their parents, and how they are willing to sacrifice almost everything just to see that their parents are proud of them, and how much parents' attitude toward specific situations or people will form what attitude their children will have in the future toward the same people or situations. And on the contrary, I sometimes struggled to relate to Maggie as a character because I'm probably more selfish than she is, and the emotional limits that she puts on herself did not always make sense to me personally. Stylistically, the novel reminded me of Jane Austen. It has long, winding sentences, few paragraph breaks, not so many dialogues, and very slow, complex narration. I also have a couple interesting facts about George Eliot. I will partly read them just to make it a little bit quicker, but I find them fascinating, so I want to share them with you. George Eliot wrote during Victorian era, which is mid-late 1800s. Her work is more philosophical and psychological, with a strong focus on moral complexity and realism. And George Eliot, whose real name was Mary Ann Evans, wrote under a male pen name to ensure that her work would be taken seriously in a male-dominated literary world. At the time, which is 19th century England, women writers were expected to produce light romantic fiction by using a pen name. Evans avoided the prejudice against female authors and was able to publish more serious intellectual novels that explored philosophy, morality, and social criticism. Her choice also gave her more freedom to critique gender roles, something that would have likely been dismissed or heavily scrutinized if it had come from a woman. About her love life, which was scandalous at the time, she lived openly for 20 years with George Henry Lewis, a married man who could not divorce his wife. Their relationship, of course, shocked Victorian society, but it was incredibly supportive because Lewis encouraged her to write and treated her as an intellectual equal. And the last one is she was multilingual. So first of all, she was self-educated and she read Latin, Greek, German, French, and Italian, and she translated major philosophical texts. Before becoming a novelist, she worked as an editor and translator. The last book was also 5-star read for me, and it's Look Closer by David Ellis. I dare say it's the best thriller of my life. It's amazing, smart, intricately plotted psychological thriller that grips you with the way everything is calculated. No blood, no disgusting things, maybe one or two, but not that bad really, but it's more focused on psychological side. And the interesting fact is David Ellis, the author, is also a judge, which makes it more interesting to read, as there are a lot of details related to court cases, rights, and the main character knows a lot of legal intricacies. And David Ellis also has co-written a couple books with James Patterson, which tells a lot about his writing style and him as an author. There are just so many twists, and every time I was like, wait, what? I don't usually reread thrillers because once you know the ending, it doesn't make any sense. But with this one, when I finished, I instantly wanted to go back and, to look at the details from a different perspective once again. This is one of those books where you think you know everything, but you really do not know anything. And it feels predictable, yet you keep guessing and doubt everything till the very end. And my jaw kept dropping even after I finished because I kept thinking about it and I still was like, wait, what? A bit about the plot. It's about Simon and Vicky, who seem to be a normal, well-off couple living in Chicago. He is a law professor, she is working with domestic violence victims, which is totally respectable, right? But turns out nothing in their life is what it seems to be. And when the body of a rich woman found dead in a fancy suburb, their secrets begin to unravel. Both Simon and Vicky are lying. And the craziest part, till the very end, you don't understand who is playing who. And I don't want to tell you a lot about it. I think it's best to go blind. I didn't know a single thing about this one, and I'm totally happy with that. Just trust me, if you love psychological thrillers, you'll appreciate this one. Do not read the synopsis, just take a book and enjoy. This was a 5-star read for me, and this was the last book in May. As you see, I had some really good books in April and May. Please let me know in the comments what books you read in May or any other months. Maybe you have some recommendations for me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.